season's over, and is there any show better to start our summer shenanigans with than with one about a bunch of exceptionally well animated soaking wet bishies? It all started off with a 30-second PV of KyoAni basically saying, "Look how fucking amazing we are at animated water, guys!" But it didn't take long for this Swimming Boys anime teaser to turn into a series that's gotten more exposure on Tumblr than brain-dead celebrities do in English tabloids. So hello, welcome back, and I present to you a review of Free Iwatobi Swim Club, a 12-episode slice-of-life sports series based on the light novel series High Speed by Koji Oji. His name rhymes with itself, isn't that amazing? It aired during the summer season of 2013, was produced by the studio Kyoto Animation, was written by Masahiro Yokotani, and directed by Hiroko Itsumi. My word, has this thing received mixed opinions from the community since it started, with all those homophobic Henrys going, "Ew, penises!" and all those Fujoshi Francines going, and it's had its fair share of other opinions too, but honestly guys, there is more to this show than the pretty boys, I promise. Though that is still a part of it, granted, and Ray is totally my favourite. Just look at him with his fantastic red rims and calculating demeanour. In any case, we'll save that topic for a bit later, as this series does actually have a story behind it. Back in elementary school, 4 close friends competed in swimming tournaments together, but sadly, after they achieved victory at this level, they all ended up going their separate ways. Many years later, our story begins after 3 members of the group reunite in Iwatobi High School and encounter the 4th member who had supposedly just returned to Japan from Australia. Things heat up at this point when Haruka Nanase, the one most easily describable as the main character, and Rin Matsuoka, the chap who they've just been reunited with, clash in the water for the first time in many years. This incident's outcome marks the start of a major rivalry between Rin and the 3 from Iwatobi, who soon go on to recruit our Megane supporting favourite and form a swim club in order to clash with Rin at prefecturals. It's a touching tale of water, friendship, rivalries, and the best of Bishonen who for some reason don't have nipples. Unless they're saving them for the Blu-ray version, you know, because censorship and all that. The first thing everyone slated this show for was essentially being the man service show, the female equivalent of a standard ecchi series marketed at uncultured gentlemen such as yours truly. This rep was pretty much there from the moment the original PV came out, and after the first few episodes of dramatic stripping and questionable camera angles, the ammunition was there for those to slate it thusly. But after this initial span of episodes, the man service isn't really a part of this thing at all if you think about it. I mean, this is legitimately a series about swimming, and thus it goes with the territory that they have to be shirtless, but honestly, they couldn't have chosen less revealing attire if they tried. They're essentially all wearing half a wetsuit, and if this thing really did not have much more than fan service targeted at girls on its mind, I'm pretty sure you wouldn't have seen a minute pass without getting up close and personal with a pair of Speedos. And sure, there are ongoing things throughout to pander to this demographic, like a fairly noticeable slice of shonen eye subtext here and there, but it wouldn't be enough to make the average bachelor shout, "Gay!" and ignore all the other great things this series brought to the table. Now, the story itself is very simple and straightforward, but one of the biggest things it did to impress me was display one of the best examples of slice-of-life genre fusion. This series remained a slice-of-life at its core. It was character-driven above all else, but it was still able to be a legitimate sports anime at the same time. The sport of swimming was not just there as a tack-on addition to allow for shirtlessness, it was actually the driving force behind this thing's character motivation. It wasn't the main focus of the story itself as with a purely sport-based series, but it was what controlled the friendship and rivalries that drove its narrative. It wasn't in the vein of something like K-On! That used music as a theme but not as a true plot point. Because in K-On! You could replace the music with all manner of things and its characters and ideas would remain unchanged, but with Free, if you replace swimming with something else, you would completely change what the show was. It displayed all of the things I love about slice of life series, with the same fantastic spot-on humour we've always come to expect from KyoAni, combined with enough of that thrilling energy I adore about sports anime. It combined them in around a 70 to 30% split, and it did so in a way that allows me to seriously be able to label this as a series in the sports genre with a straight face. And in terms of the quality of the story, I did actually find it very enjoyable. The whole team reunited thing combined with the classic friends becoming rivals plot point isn't the most original set of narrative ideas the medium ever seen, but does it need to be? This was a genuine story with a brilliant emphasis on the importance of friendship and teamwork within sport, and the history behind each of these relationships was fleshed out to the point where I at least was able to care about what happened. It was a lovely and heartwarming spin on a series revolving around a club in high school, and sits up there with my favourite examples of shows that rely on these themes. But there was also another angle at which you're able to look at this series that for me was the main thing that made it so damn funny in places. And this angle comes down to the characters and specifically the archetypes in which some of them fit into. The big obvious thing they're all emblazoned with to tell you this was intentional was the fact that each of the 5 main characters all have female names. And essentially these characters for the most part are female archetypes in male bodies, commonly taking a lot of actions that the female cast would take in a similar slice of life series with a more traditional angle. So for some reason when they played on these common generic moe tropes you see in ecchi shows and slice of lifes and all manner of other genres, the comedy of this, through comparison, felt utterly hilarious to me. I mean, it sounds so simple, but when you put a guy in a swimsuit apron combo, it's just like, oh my god, that's wildly amusing for some reason. So if you are a bloke checking this thing out and you're into or just used to all this junk in other genres, then you can absolutely enjoy this series as a true parody of that in places. But there was a problem with this, and that if you look at it from a different angle, it does mean that a few of the characters could easily come across as the weakest part of the show to many. They use these generic archetypes in a new and interesting way, but at the end of the day, they're still going to be weak in comparison to some of the great, more original characters we've seen in productions from this studio in the past. But as I've said, this wasn't an issue for me, and I actually adored the cast and thought they were brilliant. So let's start things off with the first of our femininely named Normans, and the main character in some regards, Haruka Nanase. Haru was one of your blank, distant and quiet characters who had a single defining quirk, that being that he is absolutely in love with water. Everything about his passions in life come from the wonder that is H2O and living by the idea of being free. Thus, he swims freestyle, and though he is a very talented swimmer, throughout he is shown to care only about the water itself, not the idea of competition and winning races. Now, Haru's rival and the key player of the story in terms of plot progression comes in the form of Rin Matsuoka. His character is far more serious than the others, and by not being a part of the main group throughout the story, he has a very important and standout role. He has high goals and takes the competition of swimming to heart in a much more obvious way, thus making him, as I said, a typical and well-positioned rival figure. His is a character that, due to its location in the tale, undergoes a lot more change and growth than the rest of the cast. Thus, he was a pretty fantastic character, for even more reasons than the fact that he had sharp teeth like a shark. The next two members of the group have far less important roles in the story and are honestly the show's weakest characters overall. So Nagisa Hazuki is a childlike, beamingly happy and bubbly little Shota. He was positive in everything he did, was very immature, had a fitting position, but my only pleasure from his character came from, as I said before, because his is a very typical female character role, but beyond that he didn't really have much to add to the series. Then Makoto Tachibana, though having a more important role at times than Nagisa, was still less important than the others. His character though was much stronger for me, as he was the kind of goofy, nonchalant elder sister figure in many regards. He was responsible and reliable, but very warm and kind in all senses as well. Again, a typical role, but one that was still enjoyable for me outside of that. And of course we leave the best until last, and that is the one with the glasses, Rei Ryugazaki. I'd love to tell you he was my favourite for more reasons than his facial accessories, but I'm not sure if I can with a straight face. But nevertheless, he was, especially towards the end, a very important character in the series. His position was interesting in that he was the third wheel, one to join the group later on without having any history with the other members prior. And as a character, he was very stubbornly intelligent and calculating, but in a way that served to hinder him at times. He was ever the analyst and lives for the beauty of perfection. So yeah, he was brilliant, and you have to wait until episode 4 to even see the guy properly, but he's totally worth the wait. These 5 pretty much dip into and tick all the boxes that need to be when it comes to the variety needed in a group of main characters in a slice of life series. Even if you dislike one or more of them individually, their chemistry as a group was, for me at least, enough to justify the inclusion of the characters I didn't connect with as much. There's also a girl in there too by the name of Go Matsuoka, and she's Rin's sister and adores muscles like that chick from Kuroko. I won't spend much time on her, but I think her main brilliance was as an on-screen representation of this thing's assumed female fan base. And another thing I did find pretty cool about the main group was that each one of them had an animal assigned to them. So whether it was Rin with his shark teeth or Rei swimming butterfly, there were so many subtle little on-screen visuals tying the characters to their respective beasts. And moving further into their designs as a whole, I honestly have nothing but praise for it. I thought the designs were fantastic and all kinds of memorable. Then because this whole thing started from KyoAni showing us how amazingly they could animate water, I think it goes without saying that this thing looks astonishingly gorgeous. But the thing is, it wasn't actually consistently at its highest level, and strangely enough, I actually praised them for this. But before I get further into why I like that, there was one thing I wasn't fond of, and that was the use of CGI background characters. I just don't like it when shows do this. I mean, it's fine if it's from a great distance, but when you see them in a series as gorgeous as this one, they just stick out like a banana hammock. But they were so infrequent that I didn't mind all that much, and so back onto what I was saying, the fact that the best of the best animation wasn't used at all times was a fantastic thing for me, because the series was brilliantly animated overall, but at very important parts it would be shifted into another gear. There were some scenes in this thing that almost blew my mind. They were so bloody nice to look at. The attention to detail was insane. It does go to show and prove that KyoAni don't have their reputation for no reason. They are highly acclaimed because they are incredible at what they do, and they're pretty shit at selecting their music as well. Before I move into the insert songs, I just want to say that the opening and ending to this series were amazing. The ending in particular, in combination with the visuals that went along with it, actually told a story of its own, and it was absolutely wonderful. Watched them both every time and enjoyed them both every time. And the background music and insert tracks had so much variety to them and were awesome! Whether it was some hilariously aggro dubstep during a race or something really quite smooth and moving during an important sequence of character interaction, it pretty much did everything I could hope it to do and more. Then to round off with the likes of Mamoru Miyano and such in the casting, both the choices of who portrayed each role and their individual performances were absolutely banging. Like, there were a couple of scenes with a little more drama here and there that ended up being way more powerful than they should have been based solely on the quality of the voice acting. So much as with the rest rest of it, I found it bloody impressive. For anyone who disregarded this show or dropped it early on, I may have just confused the balls off of you by regarding it as I do. I wasn't expecting much more from this than wonderful animation and decent comedy when I went into it, and though it does have its problems and is not at all for everyone, I enjoyed it way more than anything else this season. I thought it was absolutely splashing. Thus today I shall be diving into a dripping wet 76% rating on Free, and highly recommend it to those of you who are fans of both slice of life and sports series. Though I would not recommend it to people who are just into sports series, as it's not enough of one to be enjoyed for that alone in my opinion. If you do wish to check this thing out, then you can simply do as I did and run along over to Crunchyroll and watch it there. So, have you seen this show? If so, what did you think of it? And as always, feel free to drop me a recommendation of what you want me to review next. I'm pretty sure you can already tell what's coming soon, so until then, see you next week. Yeah. 自分らしい